Welcome back to the South African Morning. I'm Gareth Edwards. Political parties, NGOs and individuals have given government, it's essentially an ultimatum if you will, they've given government until Friday to respond to their concerns about the rolling blackout. Stage 4 at the moment, by the way. If they don't respond, they're going to face legal action. They've sent a letter of demand to Eskom and the shareholders. They're also seeking the reversal of this 18.65% increase granted to Eskom by Nersa. Build One SA is one of the organizations demanding an explanation from both government and Eskom. Let's bring in their leader, Mmusi Maimane, to the show. Good to have you with us, Mmusi, and all the best for the year. When I say all the best, right now we're just hoping for stage 2. I think most of us would be happy with stage 2, which is such a sad reality for us to be in. So what exactly are we calling for? Because we know that protests don't work in the country. We hear the president saying that there should be legal avenues for people to vent their anger. It doesn't work. We are an angry country, aren't we?
Good morning, and it has been a very difficult start to this year, and I agree with you entirely. The most crucial thing that we've got to focus on this year, if I had to say what is South Africa's collective resolution, it must be to keep the lights on, because if we were a country at war, the first thing that we would destroy would be our energy supply, which means the country becomes totally dysfunctional. And that's what's happening now. And our court application really will anchor on the undermining of all the rights. You cannot educate a nation without lights. You can't keep citizens healthy. You certainly can't keep an economy going. And so it's not just a function of seeking accountability. It's also a function of going, you can't ask the citizen to be the underwriter of a service such as energy that is doubling every 4 years in cost, but halving in supply. So it is now time for us to collectively take action. I disagree with you that protests do not work. I think actually protests communicate to a government your own displeasure. And if you'll remember, even when President Jacob Zuma around state capture, those protests symbolically told the president that time needed to change. And so I'm saying, whether we march and we take matters to court or to parliament, we have to collectively as a nation say to this government that you have failed to provide energy, we will not be funding you and paying 18% increase, and ultimately we will take legal action against you. And that's the plan that we're taking on board.
Why hasn't South Africa really protested? I mean, we've seen mass protests before. Why haven't we really come out and hit the streets on this? It's been around since 2007, 2008.
Yeah, I think in the main, South Africans, we're naturally an optimistic group of people. And I'm proud of that, to be a South African in that sense. Where I think has been happening over a period of time is that we all collectively believe that the government had the capability to solve the problem. That as the stages go up, that one day we will get back to stage 2 and eventually we will have no load shedding. And we've been promised repeatedly and given credence to leaders. Now I think collectively as a country we've come to a point that says, actually no, we are now heading up the stage lines. And the second thing is that as additional industries are being created, whether those are providing solar panels or whatever additional industry goes, those industries are entirely dependent on the presence of load shedding. So the incentive to fix the situation doesn't happen. Also coinciding with the fact that there's now high inflation that has hit the country. So the costs are going up, and I think citizens have had enough. So we're seeing protests in Jutsobotla. We're seeing in various communities people are taking action. And I'm grateful for that, because we've got to come to a point where we realize that the government must be held accountable. And we are tabling a plan about how we can actually change the Eskom scenario by forcing the government not only to reject the 18%, but to include small nuclear reactors that will augment the situation at the moment. Because unless we intervene urgently and quickly, this could be the very crippling and the distraction of our entire economy.
Let's talk about the increase, because you just mentioned it for a moment there, Mmusi, as well, this 18.65, if memory serves correct. Calling for a reversal of that. Are we talking about a full reversal or just a reversal to the point where we as South Africans are not funding the debt? Because surely we have to agree that Eskom does need money for maintenance. You just spoke about inflation. Things do cost more now than they did last year. Surely we can't give Eskom no money, but it's the lack of paying off their debt that is the problem. They need money to at least try and do some maintenance. Wouldn't you agree?
No, certainly. But that cost cannot be at a point where it's hyper above inflation at the level that it is. Also keep in mind, whilst we talk about 18%, we are also describing a scenario where municipalities have to add their additional costs. So for the ordinary consumer who's sitting at home, this is 22 to 25% actually as an increase. So that's the first. And the second is we would be eager to fund a plan that would keep the lights on. But we're funding a plan that doesn't achieve that. So if the government came back and said, we're going to introduce nuclear, we're going to augment our coal plants, we're going to ensure that we deal with the SADC region and introduce gas as an augmentation to the plan, we're going to find engineers at Eskom so that the board is well capacitated, then I think there'd be better compliance with that additional tax. But at this point in time, there is no plan, there is no energy, and yet you are asking citizens to pay even more. So it is not only morally unacceptable, it is fundamentally economically unsustainable.
Let's talk next year, because now we're at a point where we can start talking about next year's elections. You know, when it was still 2021, 2022, it was always those elections coming up in a few years' time. Now it's next year. Now we are here. We are about to hit the tip of the iceberg as the Titanic. Could this be the issue, the rolling blackouts? Could this be the issue that actually sinks the ANC in the end, do you think?
I really believe so. I think it is at the core of it. I think as we saw the residents of Soweto who have been taken to the streets, I think as it speaks to jobs, you know, Gareth, in all fairness, I think regardless of how you view the ANC, you can't keep 75% of young people unemployed. You can't keep the working adult population in that unemployment really, when you look at it in proper numbers in other provinces and you use the broad definition of more than 50%. So frankly, as it reflects that, it speaks to the core of the fact that for too many people to stay at home is unacceptable. And I think that will be the fundamental issue going into next year. That when you twin it with the fact that our educational outcomes are so woeful in the sense that the kids who are passing school are joining the ranks of the unemployed, those must be the two central issues that eventually say we cannot keep this government in place because you just can't keep people unemployed.
I just want to circle back around to, I'm calling it an ultimatum. I might be using the wrong term. I might be a bit too dramatic, but it's essentially an ultimatum that by Friday, government has to give a response. If not, there could be legal action. What is the response that you and the other organizations want to hear on Friday before you take legal action? You want to hear government, finish the sentence for me. I want the ANC government and national government to do what exactly? What do you want to hear?
Firstly, to reverse the decision on 18%. We have to take on Nersa. It is an unacceptable burden to consumers. And secondly, they must demonstrate by when and what plan will, in fact, load shedding be brought to an end. So those two fundamental issues speak to where consumers are at.
Mmusi Maimane, I appreciate your time. As always, I have no doubts we'll speak again, because whether or not there'll be a response on Friday, if not, then we're going to be talking about the legal action. But Mmusi Maimane, I always appreciate your time. Build One SA leader joining us here on ENCA. Just one of many, many parties and NGOs and organizations that have had enough of this, calling on South Africans to actually do something about it, that do something